lot of times kids, especially nowadays, feel that they have no power in what happens in the world around them. They feel disconnected, not listened to. And so I think allowing them the opportunity to express their opinions, to find a way to be able to make a difference in the world is huge for them going forward. At a young age, if they can understand that they can make an impact on the world, then they will, as an adult, continue to do that. In my class, especially because I teach English, I think there are so many opportunities. Literature that we're reading, like the Diary of Anne Frank, where social issues come up. I try to work change-making into the curriculum. So if we're reading something that is about a certain social issue, when kids start discussing that and talking about problems in the world, we talk about, well, what could we do about those problems? And you could make a difference. I think that having a voice, being empowered has become part of the culture, so that kids now know that they are active members of the school community, that it's not the adults and they make all of the rules and the adults run everything. I think now kids just naturally know that, and they are very inclined to go to the principal or to a teacher and say, hey, we want to do this, or we were thinking about doing that. So I think change making has become part of our culture and become something that's sort of a unique selling proposition for our school. The principal and all of the administration has always been supportive of the Youth Venture Program, which is sort of how we started. And our principal is 110% behind change making. He's an active part of the whole program. And our culture would not have changed if it weren't for him, because it does mean for teachers and staff members, being a Changemaker school means getting a little bit out of your comfort zone and doing things differently than maybe you've done them for 10, 15, 20 years. And also it's giving up some control. And so affording teachers the opportunity to try different things and feel comfortable with it, and not be afraid of doing that, makes all the difference. Knowing that the principal is fine if you try something different with the kids, or you let the kids kind of run the show, that you're not going to get in trouble, or it's not going to show up on your evaluation or something like that, is critical. For me, I have to say this is the best part of my job, working with Youth Venture and being able to be a part of a change-making school where we can do things differently. Because it also, I think, having a change-maker environment and having the Youth Venture program is more inclusive of all of the students, where kids might not be traditionally great academically. When they get involved in a change-making project and they have a chance to succeed, it makes a huge difference. And it gives us a chance to see the kids in a different way than we've seen them before. And a lot of times you see a side of a student that you've never seen, and you go, hey, wow, this kid's actually a really good kid, or he's really bright, and just doesn't fit the traditional classroom, but the child has a lot to offer. And I've seen so many kids who have had very low self-esteem because, again, maybe their grades aren't great, get involved in Youth Venture or a Changemaker project and have success, and it just changes how they feel about themselves and how they act in the classroom. Well, just recently we had a Youth Venture group that was raising money to help support our Washington Activity Week, so kids who don't go on the Washington field trip, we try to run activities, but some kids can't afford that. So I had a group of students who wanted to do a fundraiser to help raise money for that. Another group of students heard about that. They had fundraising money left over from their group, and they went to these kids and said, "We love what you're doing. We want to support you." So it was kind of interesting. Kids were giving to other kids money that they had earned fundraising to support, to say, "We love what you're doing," without any adults involved. It was all their idea, they did it. And just to see kids being that kind, a lot of times adults aren't that kind. So to see that in the kids really brings joy. That old model of teachers and staff are here and students are totally separate. I went to school 8 billion years ago, so that was definitely the case. It doesn't foster that same kind of closeness that you have when you have a changemaker environment, where obviously you have adults who are in charge who have to kind of set the rules, but you're working more collaboratively with kids versus an us and them. And there's so much that can be learned from the kids. I learn more from the kids than they learn from me, because they're able to share their talents, what they're really good at. And so it's more of an us, all of us environment than the separate us and them. Honestly, I think in terms of education, if all schools were Changemaker schools, I actually think that we'd see a lot more student success, because again, we'd be tapping into all types of intelligence versus the straight, I'm the purveyor of knowledge and you absorb that and spit it back. I think what we're finding is with the Changemaker environment, kids are discovering more on their own, and we're more coaches. And I think just in general, if all schools in the area were Changemaker schools, you'd see kids, again, more invested in their education, teachers as coaches versus just teller, And I also think you'd see a lot more tolerance and kindness, because I think that's just a natural offshoot. When people are working together as a team and really get to know each other, they're more tolerant of people who are different. In theory, change-making sounds great, but I think, at least for me, trying to wrap my head around, so I understand the philosophy, but what does that look like in the classroom? And I think a lot of us were sort of hung up on that, like that it had to look a certain way. And I think it doesn't have to look a certain way, and it's not a whole change in curriculum or the way that you do things. It's just seeing things differently and transferring some of the ownership to the students. So again, if your curriculum, if there's any opportunity to take what you're already doing and give more control of that to the students in terms of maybe even how they're graded, what kind of projects they do, how they show their knowledge, you can be creative with it. I think it's more just a way of looking at your classroom than a particular set of things to do. The biggest challenge when we started talking about becoming a Changemaker school and talking to staff about it is people immediately went, oh geez, one more new thing to do, it's a new initiative, it'll be the flavor of the month, and then next month it'll be something different. So there was a lot of resistance, and I think that's another thing that you find. There can be a lot of resistance if people think, oh, there's a new initiative, it's a program, it's a curriculum. It's none of that. It's not yet another thing to do. it's just, again, looking at what you're already doing, and could you look at it a little bit differently and do it a different way. And honestly, I think once you really understand how to become a change maker classroom, it's actually less work, because again, it's giving students more ownership and more accountability too. It's both. You're going to have some more freedom to work within parameters, but more freedom, but you're going to have more accountability. And they seem to accept that. If they have a say, some kind of a say in how things go, then they're willing to take on the accountability too. So it's not another new thing. It's just looking at what you're doing and could you do it a little bit differently? And quite frankly, I think in the long run, more easily. It takes an ecosystem to raise a change maker.